Okay, welcome to OREIA, and tonight we have for our the expert. We have Dan Acton. He is a legislative director for OREIA, that's the Ohio Real Estate Investors Association. He is also the president of the OREIA PAC. He's going to talk to us about what's going on in state and at the legislation. He is at the front end of the legislation process. He's going to talk about that front end, and he's also going to talk about the group of folks we have working at the back end.
Thank you very much. Very generous and very optimistic introduction. Welcome. I'd like to appreciate the invitation. I'm the legislative director, as Mike said, for OREIA. I'm your liaison between OREIA and our official lobbying group, which is Governmental Policy Group in Columbus. Those folks are gracious enough to have an office provided for me up there, so when I go up, I have a place to make my calls, make the copies, get a hold of their computer, use their administrative services, and it's certainly a tremendous help. Yesterday I was up for about a 14-hour, yesterday all told was about a 16-hour day, so anytime I can get away and be able to make some calls and have a place to go where I can get a cup of coffee or a cold soda is a welcome reprieve. Governmental Policy Group has been our official lobbying agency for over 10 years now for OREIA. They're known as a tremendously active, grassroots, boots on the ground lobbying agency for OREIA. So those folks, and Matt Whitehead is our primary contact up there. Matt I've worked with Matt for a couple of years since I've been a member of OREIA, and he's become not just a co-worker, but a friend. And those guys, again, do a great job of this. Tonight I brought a list of some of the things that we talk about on our monthly legislative call that goes out to not just the legislative committee, but the executive committee and other interested parties from the groups, from the local organizations around the state. First off is House Bill 18. That's our flag banner display legislation that was brought by Representatives Gonzalez and Representative Tim Ginter. There was a lot of play in the media over poor lady had a condo that had a flag out. No, I'm sorry, it was an apartment complex. Had a flag that she displayed on the front of her property for many years. The apartment community was sold. A new management company came in, noticed there was they reviewed all the rules and noticed that this lady, this scofflaw, had a flag mast off the pole of her, or off the front post of her front porch. Sent her a nice little letter, told her she needed to take it down. Bless her little heart, she dug her heels in the sand and said, there is no way in the world I'm taking my American flag down. This is American, I display it for a reason. So it created quite a media hubbub throughout the state and some national media play. And some of the representatives picked it up, and which resulted in House Bill 18, which allows our residents to display a flag. The way they originally had it written was that they could display a flag of any size, any place, on the property. Be it, if they want to take a set of post hole diggers and just start digging in the front yard, it could be out in the easement or common area. They could erect a large flagpole there. They could take gutter nails, and I know the reason I say that, I've been one of those guys that had the tenants use gutter spikes and other services to install. It does require the resident or a renter to contact us beforehand so we can have input. I know in several of our properties, we've gone ahead and installed them on the multifamily buildings. Like 12 family, we've gone ahead and put one up in the past. So, hopefully that will be fine so that we don't have 12 different flags off 12 different balconies and people in the windows and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to give them some guidance that still allow them to display the pride that they have in our country, is like we all do. Contractor registration has been a buzzword. I just testified in Columbus yesterday on that. House Bill 77 by Representative Bill Patman. It requires statewide registration of home improvement contractors, which would initially have included most everybody in the room, so that we would have to get statewide registration. There was no cost initially to this thing, but we were trying to, thank you for your optimism. But yes, we all know how that goes, but This is driven by the storm chaser type contractors, is what we were being told. We were able to get an exemption if we were able to work on our own property. So that was one little tidbit, one area right off the bat where we were able to save you some money and some aggravation down the road. So again, that was the contractor registration. So if you're working on your own properties, you will not have to get that registration. The other contractors, just as a bit of information, if you're a home improvement contractor, you will not have to be registered if you do projects under $500, nor if the project runs over $25,000. Not sure how that happens. I guess they're assuming that if you are going to contract for a much more expensive job, that you're going to be a little more savvy in who you hire.
What are those numbers again?
Up to $500, there was no registration required. If you're going to hold yourself out as a contractor and perform some contractor functions for some neighbors or other friends, the first $500 you will not be required to be registered for, nor is it for any jobs over $25,000. Yes, ma'am.
Is it a registration per job?
At this point, it is not. It's a statewide registration, be similar to what you would find in the plumbing contractors, where you can get a statewide license, or HVAC, you can get a state
Don't they
license.
have to test for that?
Is it certification or?
Right now, they've required a 10-hour process for that, 10-hour class. They're trying to get that down to where you could do it online, and there was some good conversation yesterday about getting that down to 8 hours. So it's, if there is some type of class that you would be able to get that finished in one day pretty easy. Yes, sir.
What are the ramifications of the property owner, or is this strictly on the contractor?
This is strictly on the contractor.
Okay.
And it's to protect from those guys that are going out.
Yeah.
We've all seen them. Some of us have used them in certain circumstances. You get the guys coming up with the old pickup trucks with a busload of guys behind them, and they're the guys that have the signs in the yard every time there's a storm. They'll come up and charge your insurance company $25,000, $15,000 for what should be a $5,000 job. And then they get a lot of complaints about them afterward that, hey, they're gone and there's no warranty, or they've collected monies and they're gone. So it's geared toward the storm chasers without a doubt.
Is there anything in it that would address the problem? Or is it just
Just the registration. There is a violation process in there where it is a misdemeanor. So it is an arrestable offense. Along with some escalating fines. I think for the first time, if you're hit with it, it's perhaps a $100 fine. Second offense goes up to, I think, $250 and then $500.
What is the cost for the registration?
At this point, no cost has been addressed. It looks as though it's going to be just a pretty well simple registration process. The only problem with it would be the education that goes along with it. It is, as I said, right now it's written up with a 10-hour educational component to it, and they're trying to get that down to 8 hours. I don't know how simplistic that's going to have to be, because they know they're not hitting the plumbers, because the plumbers are licensed in their own trade, therefore they would be exempt from it. The same with heating and air conditioning guys, the same with electricians. They're all licensed in their respective fields. As long as they're practicing in their own respective fields, there's no registration required. But if your plumber decides that he's going to put a roof on your property, then he would have to get that separate, go through that separate licensing process. Yes,
Is
sir.
there a requirement for bonding or something then?
No. There does not. The way we're reading it right now, a bond is not addressed in it.
It seems like it has no value.
Well, welcome to my world. I was not going to point that out. Now, if you would like me to go back up and point that out and ask, how expensive the fees are, I could certainly do that. But sometimes the less we say up there is better than getting up there and what's that old adage? You can let people wonder how stupid you are, or you can talk and prove how stupid you are. And that's what I'm doing tonight. We go down to, were there any other questions on that?
How will they notify us?
That's what allegedly the contractor will be, if this registration process goes through, the reality of it is, Representative Bill Patman is a fine gentleman. from up in the Cleveland area, if I'm not mistaken, is a Democrat. Now, I'm not going to get into the political aspects of it, but our legislature is comprised of the House, which is controlled by the Republicans by a wide majority, and the House, which is controlled by a wide majority by the Republicans also, along with having a Republican governor. Bill Patman he is one of those guys that will cross the aisle, much to his credit, a lot of times, so, he does get a lot of respect from the Republican majority, but I really don't know how much gasoline this has behind it. I'm just not sure what
So in other words, don't worry about it until somebody says something.
I'm not, I didn't say that up here, but you said it, and I'll go along with that, and I'm not gonna require the guys that work for me, any folks that I use currently or have used in the past, I'm not gonna say, hey, let me see your ID card. I mean, truly what they're trying to address is those folks that come up and charge the little old lady, $7,500 down payment on a $15,000 roofing job that you could get done for, $5,000. And then they never see them again. It's another tool in the tool belt for enforcement on them. And I'm sure then they'll be able to get the Attorney General involved because there are some fair business practices over the $25,000 threshold. But it looks like under the $25,000 threshold, there aren't as many tools in the tool belt for them to address that. And this is just another way for them to get in there. So I'm thinking it's truly, he has the consumers in his heart when he's doing it. I don't think it's malicious by any means. And Bill is, as I said, Bill is a very stand-up guy. So I'm taking him as word that truly is what his intent is. Any other questions on that?
So there's no enforcement arm of this as of yet?
We're not seeing that right now.
Okay.
Now, how local communities pick that up and run with it, Mike, I'm not sure. We all know code enforcement locally in different villages and townships and cities can vary widely. I don't know if they're going to see a contractor's van out. I know I've had some HVAC work done on some properties I have in Fairfield, where a code enforcement person is driven by and has seen a large white van out there with a guy unloading a heat pump and stopped and said, hey, where's your permit for this? I don't know how proactive they're going to be, if they're going to have roving bands of code enforcement officers going around. I suspect in the community that I'm very familiar with that might be the process, but they're, so they can enforce it on their own. I'm not sure. More facts will come out. The longer this is in the legislature, the more it'll kind of flesh itself out, and we'll be able to know what they have in mind.
Okay.
You register this online? Is that how you register?
Again, the bill is silent on the actual, on how this is working out. Again, we can go up there, and I testified on 3 bills yesterday. This was one of them, just to make sure we got our carve out that we could work our own properties. But, and that was just an oversight, but we wanted to make sure that was covered. We're just kind of letting them do what they can, and when if a senator introduces this on the Senate side, we can kind of work with them and make sure we can kind of fine tune the minutia a little bit more. Any other questions on that? And we'll keep you posted. We have a monthly legislative phone call anywhere, the participants range anywhere from 10, 15, 20 people. Kind of depends on, it's the second Monday of every month at 2 p.m. I would love to invite you all, but the realities are we're doing the freeconferencecall.com, and if I had 75 people on that line, we'd never hear anything with all the static and phones ringing and background noise and everybody trying to get a comment on in there. We'd be on the phone till the next conference call a month from now. So Tim will be one of the invitees, certainly. Mike, I'll try and get you on there also. We try and have 2 members from each of the associations invited on there so that they can pass word through you guys as far as what's going on. So Sean was on there regularly, Marsha Grossman, my contemporary I'm active in the Ohio Apartment Association, Greater Dayton Apartment Association also, John Grossman, my friend from there is also on there. So, if you see those folks out, let them know. Or if you hear of any local ordinances that are coming up, make sure that they reach out to me. I'll write my name, phone number, and my email address down there. If you guys hear some local ordinances coming up, I can't fight local zoning ordinances for you. Look, guys, I'd love to drill down into the minutia for you, but if the ordinances are impacting our industry, which is Ohio's largest small business without a doubt, being real estate investors, reach out to me, because sometimes we all assume that Sean has seen it, or that Tim's seen it, or Marcia's seen it, and oftentimes that's not the case, because they may not have property in Beaver Creek, or lately Fairborn was a hot topic. Up in Canton and some of those other areas, we like to bring that up in our conversations so we can share it with our other members around the state, because if somebody's doing it, most of those guys have heard about the ordinances that they propose locally from other cities and other counties, so we know that fire is going to pop up in another part of the state, and we want to address it there as well. On House Bill 126, this is a nuisance law. Many of you know that Dayton has its own nuisance law up there. This one is kind of patterned after what Dayton has done, and in a lot of discussions I've had, including one of my partners has a fair number of properties in the area, it's not really been too widely used to impact us too much. It looks like it was a pretty thoughtful process to go in on the nuisance law. Be happy to, if any of you folks have had experience with Dayton's nuisance law, if you have a comment or something like that about what your experience has been with you, I'd love to hear that. Have any of you dealt with the nuisances? Fantastic. All you guys are responsible property owners. Sean, with you, and Sean was also very active with me over at the Apartment Association. I got to give him a lot of credit for that. Sean, what have your experiences been with the nuisance law here in Dayton?
Lately, they have not been raising a lot of noise lately. For the last 5-6 years, we've been kind of quiet because they were short, and they're really short on the inspections, so they're not doing much. Mm-hmm. So in a way, they're kind of dormant.
And that's good. This is driven at statewide levels. Some of you might have picked up some of the news either on Facebook or on some of the other online sources for the City of Columbus. The City of Columbus is not unlike many of our cities, many of our larger cities, that have the highway exits that at one time were very popular. And then there's a more popular exit that opens up another exit or two down the road, and then that's where all the popular hotels go to now, all the nice restaurants, and then that first exit, which was the primary exit many years ago, ends up being a little bit on the iffy side. They've come up with which has left Columbus and many of our other cities with some hotels that really aren't all that desirable. Tremendous amount of drug dealing, prostitution, and other undesirable things have occurred there, and they want some type of tool in the tool belt to address that. What we're fighting in Columbus for on behalf of OREIA is that they actually want to be able to hold some of those properties out as a nuisance if you've been victimized. We brought that up, and they immediately took our suggestion and our concerns to that into effect when they came up with the latest version of the law. I can only imagine the press that any of us would get. You, sir, if you got a Channel 9 showed up or Channel 10 showed up at your doorstep, Channel 7 showed up at your doorstep with a TV camera in their hand and said, "I'm sorry, but I understand you just had to evict a lady who's been a victim of domestic violence. Why did you do that, sir?" I mean, you can only imagine the horror any of us would feel on that. So we did get a carve out on that to protect those true victims of crime, and we're trying to make sure that the reasons that they use for nuisance are very limited to truly the drug dealings, the violent offenses that are there, and keep it to those and leave some of the other things out. We want to make sure there's also some credit for proactive investors and proactive property owners. There are a lot of issues with that, and we want to just try and narrowly focus it on those truly problem properties, not open it up to potentially because, Sean has a number of properties over here, and we've got issues with Sean, we're going to put his properties under a microscope and target him, and we've certainly seen that in the past on some other things locally. Going on down, House Bill 144 is the methamphetamine property remediation bill. That's in the House also with Representative Anielski and Representative Sykes. We've had several meetings with them and also with our local Senator Bill Beagle. And I want to let you know, Bill Beagle is not just our senator here in Montgomery County or close to it. Bill's a pretty good guy. Bill's also a property investor. He's got a good amount of property, so I think he understands it. But this methamphetamine bill makes it solely the responsibility of the property owner to clean up our properties if someone is cooking meth in them. I have an issue with that right now because, you know, there are some big monies out there. The state comes in, they do some mitigation. Our local governments are coming in there doing their things, and we're left basically to do some tidying up or perhaps put some new carpet in and some of those kind of things where it's not too onerous on us. But to go in and just say, well, you're going to be responsible for anywhere between $8,000 and $30,000 of your net profits seems a little bit much to me. And we're trying to emphasize to those legislators that we weren't involved in it. I'm not aware of, especially this guy, I'm not familiar in your leases. If you're getting 20% off those meth labs, you know, you're certainly not a partner in them, so why should you be held responsible for them? I mean, you're a victim in the truest sense of the definition of the term. So we just want to make sure that we don't get held responsible. It's bad enough trying to eke out a living in this business to start with, and to be held to some sort of a higher standard. I can't imagine what the ramifications of that would be. I mean, it's truly one of the only laws I know of where the victim is being held responsible for the totality of the crime. Could you imagine, you know, some of the other instances out there? I mean, if somebody backs, take this to this next step in this day and age where nobody is responsible for anything that they do. You know, someone backs into your car in the parking lot. We're going to hold the Dayton Board of Realtors responsible for repairing your car, you know, 100%, and then bill each of the members, yeah, and then ultimately hold them for a nuisance. So we have to be careful with that. Attorney's fees. The bill is called Attorney's Fees, Actual Damages. That's kind of an interesting description for the bill. It's House Bill 149. It's before us thanks to Jonathan Deaver from the Cincinnati area and John Patterson. It's truly a bipartisan bill. There's a companion bill in the Senate by Senator Bill Seitz of the Cincinnati area. This is your infamous fair housing law updates. Fair housing is such a hot topic right now that we really want to make sure we pay attention to this. We've been involved in several meetings, both officially with those representatives that are sponsoring the bill, but many hallway meetings and many unofficial meetings in offices with other legislators to make sure that our needs as property owners are met, along with keeping the spirit of fair housing intact. I don't think any of us in this room are against fair housing. I've run into a number of folks of all creeds, colors, religions. I don't have a problem with that. I think that some of the organizations around the state, though, have a reputation for truly going after, I'm going to call them the innocent or uninformed owners. And we've seen that with the Helen Grabowski. I don't know if you folks have heard Helen Grabowski's story, but elderly lady that owned a property. The basic gist of it, I may have some of the facts out of order, but the basics were, the lady had a duplex. Someone came out to test her from a fair housing organization. They said that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they said the apartment was for their brother who had an animal that would be a service animal. And Helen, bless her heart, not really a savvy investor, she had the duplex, I think a house, and maybe a mixed-use building, you know, one of the old inner city retail / apartments above it kind of properties. Helen said, sure, I don't mind. You know, this is no pet's property, but since it's a service animal, I don't have an issue with that. No monthly fee, but I would like to get a $100 pet deposit to cover in case there are some costs that the animal would have me to incur after you move out. I mean, it sounds reasonable. There's no pet fee. She's just asking for a pet deposit on the pet. Unfortunately for her, that is not permitted under fair housing. The pets will be treated exactly as children were, and that, you know, with them being an assistance animal, so that she in fact had broken not just the spirit, but she had broken the fair housing law. Instead of the tester saying, I'm sorry, Mrs. Grabowski, but there's a problem with that, they took it back to the office, and there was some discussion there at the office that said, well, hey, we've got a hot one here. This lady's violating fair housing law. You would expect Helen to have received a letter in the mail, maybe a phone call a week or so later after they've talked about the office and just written her letter and said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Grabowski, but here's a copy of our fair housing laws. You may want to study these because this was a clear violation, and we don't want that. And us as a trade association don't want that. These are the guys that are out there causing us problems. They're professional housing providers. They didn't do that. They waited another, I'm going to say another month after that, and sent out another tester. Different tester. Helen still had the duplex available. A family, someone represented themselves as a family came up and said, you know, we'd like to rent your apartment. It was an upstairs, downstairs duplex type situation, if I'm not mistaken. Helen said, well, I've got, you know, sure, the upstairs apartment's available, but, you know, I've had problems in the past with noise issues. I mean, it's an old building. We'd really like to, you know, if it's possible, it's the same identical apartment downstairs. If you could take the first floor apartment, that might prevent some problems down the road with noise. I certainly wouldn't want to bother you. Again, the suggestion doesn't sound unbusinesslike. Unfortunately, it's another clear violation of fair housing standards. It falls into the steering statutes where you're trying to tell somebody where they can live, even though you have multiple properties available. Again, the same property, same condition of property, except instead of this door on the left, it's the door on the right. They did that one and then tested Helen again on the dog, and if I'm not mistaken, again on something else. Never did call her back up, never did. The only other thing she saw was 6 months later, she went to the mail and there was a letter before her that said she had been tested, had multiple violations. Sean, correct me if I'm mistaken, but wasn't the original letter something in the neighborhood of $7,500
Yeah.
as a fine?
Yes.
Basically, if you pay this, we'll forget about it. It sounds like a racket to me. I mean, if they're truly about it, I support fair housing. I don't mind my tax dollars support through community development grant monies, supporting fair housing, supporting vigorous testing. I don't mind that. But when they find a violation, all we're asking for is they contact that person immediately and let them know about the violation. It should be about corrective action. If they were so concerned about this lady as being such an egregious violator for a 6-month period, if they've tested her multiple times, it kind of negates that argument that this is such a serious issue. If you wait 6 months to bring it to her attention, it doesn't sound like it's quite as serious as they were trying to portray it. What this bill does is preventing that, we call pancaking of charges, where they just stack them up, stack them up, stack them up. We wanted to address them immediately. Poor old Helen didn't know any better, and I don't think anybody in this room would like to, you know, when was the last time you went to Walmart or somewhere where they charged you the wrong price and you just said okay, or you didn't say anything? You let them do it half a dozen times, and then 6 months later said, hey, look, by the way, I want my money back on all these charges. It's foolish. We want to address it at that time. We also want some parity brought in for the fines. If they do find a case that is out there where someone is openly violating the fair housing standards or fair housing laws, federal law, mind you, we would like the opportunity for those folks to participate in educational opportunities, along with perhaps some fining, along with perhaps some reasonable fines. But a lot of the issue, I'll get to you in just one moment. A lot of the issue we're having is it seems as though it's a money grab, where they're coming in. Poor Helen ended up with a bill. She hired a family friend that was an attorney, who was not a real estate attorney, to represent her in a fair housing case. Very aggressive guy. I believe Taryn Hale has spoken here, if I'm not mistaken, a while back. Taryn's a good guy. I mean, he just came in like a typical aggressive guy and started filing all these motions and asking reasonable questions that any of us would ask in a court case. And the longer that the court case dragged on, the more the fines went up, the more the administrative fees went up. Come to find out, when it was all said and done, they're allowed to, somehow in law, they're allowed to charge for, fair housing agencies are allowed to charge you for a phrase known as distraction of, frustration of mission. I'm sorry, frustration of mission. That's your phrase of the day. Their argument is that fair housing is to truly help those people that need housing. So if they are frustrated in their mission by having to go out and test this guy over here, it's distracting them from their educational opportunities. Therefore, they've had to spend more money to do that, so they want to recoup those costs. They not only want to recoup the $50 to $100 that it cost them to hire that tester, but they also want you to pay for the training for that person, which, by the way, one of the agencies not too far from here also has that opportunity available for anybody that wants to sign up for the educational opportunity to become a tester. But you have to sign a sworn secrecy statement, CIA-like, that you'll never ever reveal the details of that training to anyone.
What?
Oh yeah, that's online. Oh yeah, you got to sign it's in disappearing ink. You can't. That's like one of those email servers that's been in national news. You just can't talk. You just don't go there.
More free in Russia.
Well, and I don't mind if they're gonna say use a false name. I don't mind that. I've been in the past. I've had some law enforcement court experience. I know for investigative purposes, sometimes I did not use my real name. Okay, I don't mind if they come up with, use a name like Sean Reddy. I mean, who would use that kind of name? But if they want to test someone, that's fine. If they want to say they have a family or a service dog, or they're a veteran, and I want to pause right now and thank each and every one of you that have served and have got families that are serving. But veterans are a protected class. But if they want to portray themselves as being a veteran and they're not for testing purposes, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't understand why the secrecy is there in that. But anyway, back to the fair house. Oh, let me go with your question. I'm sorry.
Well, actually, it was just a comment. It seems like it would be fair, they didn't notify her that she was testing or, anything. It seems like it would be fair that they should be required by law, fair housing should be required by law to send them a letter, the person that they tested, to give them an opportunity to get counsel. Because in her case, she couldn't defend herself. There's nothing that she could say that would make it look like, she was just she had that person's best interest in,
You're right. So that's what we're trying to do to this, is bring some common sense business practices to it. Some of the fair housing agencies across the state are much better than the others. I know the city of Cincinnati, thanks to Cincinnati OREIA, the Cincinnati Apartment Association, they got together and they formed a mediation process down there in partnership with the fair housing agency down there that I dealt with. They're very fine people. And a lot of it is dealt with in mediation. It's not about finding, it's about going to mediation and bringing that up and making sure the educational opportunities are there. And that's truly what it's about. If we find these people out there, be they uninformed people or someone that's egregious, we need to deal with them on that level and not treat Helen. Helen should not be the standard bearer of all that's wrong with real estate, with poor real estate investors. Yes, sir.
In Helen's case, where she was considered steering, she could have said, I have 2 places available. These are your choices. Would that have been a violation or not?
I don't believe it was, because I've done that, and let's just say that we like to tell people that there are, that we have this one as a rear-facing unit that faces the river. We have a front unit, we have one that has a balcony, or this one is on the, because it's the second or third floor, or this one does not. We'll give them that opportunity. But I think in her situation, since she did kind of drill down into the more specifics of it, because she had noise complaints because the family had lived there before with children, and she wanted to kind of limit from being a problem in the future, that it kind of veered into that territory.
So she told too much of a story.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right.
And again, she did violate, and I don't mind that if that's what they're wanting to do, but it should have been one of those, the person, the tester gets back to the office, goes in the administrator and says, hey, we've got a live one over here, we need to get her a brochure and let her know what's going on, tell her that, give her the pamphlet, here are our fair housing guidelines, be sure you're adhere to this, we're gonna put you on double secret probation for the next year, we're gonna, if we see any other vacancies that you come, we wanna list your properties, and that way if a listing comes up, if you have another property for lease, we reserve the right, not just the opportunity, but the right to go out and test you to make sure that you're adhering to those guidelines. If, Helen, we have a problem with that, we're going to have some more severe sanctions. You're going to have to fine. You're going to be forced to attend some educational opportunities.
First,
Yes.
Is this something you see bad things in, or it's okay and you're just trying to make sure and add good things to what they're doing?
This bill was specifically brought up because they're not naming it the Helen Grabowski bill, but that certainly brought it.
Okay, so it's intended to be a good law. We're
Yes.
just trying to make sure. I just want to make sure I was clear.
And I'll talk about that in just a few moments. I don't know how much time I have left, but these representatives and the senator that's bringing this forward, these guys are carrying OREIA's water up here. That of all real estate investors and people that want to get in the industry. So we want to make sure we support those guys. Needless to say, some of the folks on the fair housing side of it have targeted them and called them some pretty bad names.
Seems like intent should be a piece of that puzzle.
And that's
When it comes to finding.
and that's certainly open for interpretation. But when you start saying I need an extra, in Mrs. Grabowski's in the Mrs. Grabowski case, ultimately the state ended up having, I believe it's 3 to 4 attorneys involved in that on the fair housing side. And they were all charging for their salaries and office expenses and all that kind of stuff. And you're thinking, okay, well maybe that's fair, except they were already on government payroll. It's kind of like some of the city workers you see that, you don't, like the snowplow guys, that they may be dedicated snowplow drivers, but they're not driving, they're on payroll already. I mean, I don't know how much, during their normal pay shift, how much is it really costing taxpayers if they're already, like a firefighter, they're already on shift. I can see charging the gas money, charging some administrative fees, and depreciation on the equipment, but when you start charging the whole salaries back, poor Helen ended up with a bill well over $100,000, like $150,000 or something like that.
This case is resolved, isn't it?
No, not yet.
There are still some issues with it, and I'm not privy to those right now, but a lot of those more egregious fines have been eliminated.
Okay.
They've come to their senses a little bit more. And I've met with a number of fair housing people up there, and the court that they appear of in Columbus. They're good people. Most of them are really good, decent people. Some of them are certainly taking advantage of the situation. So we want to make sure that again we support this thing. Again, that's House Bill 126. Locally, the most local legislator doing is Senator Bill Seitz in Cincinnati. And I know I've got just a couple more minutes here, but keep an eye on that, folks.
And if I could just say one thing, the way I look at it, every time I answer my phone, I pretend there's a tester on the other end. So if you just look at it that way, then it'll help keep your people.
And that's the best way of doing it. And when I go and represent OREIA at one of these types of functions in Columbus, they look at me like, well, you guys are the problem. And it's just like, no, we're the trade organization. We've got the good guys. We have our code of ethics. We have our training opportunities. We have this session tonight. Maybe you're not learning a whole lot tonight, but we have training opportunities at least monthly, where you can get the education. You have the fair housing people that come in that speak to you. We're kind of like the Chamber of Commerce for those folks. I mean, when was the last time anybody had real issues with the Chamber of Commerce member? It's those independent guys that are out there that don't get those opportunities that can cause some problems for us. And I know keeping with the time, I'll wrap it up, but those are certainly two of the biggest highlight bills we have are a couple of them are the methamphetamine bill, the flag bill, and certainly the fair housing bill. I want to go back and put my other hat on now as head of the OREIA PAC organization. We have partnered with the 1851 Center for Constitutional Law, an independent law firm in Columbus, Ohio. And for those of you that have not heard yet, I'm sure many of you have, there was a court case on rental inspections, fee-based rental inspections in Portsmouth, Ohio. 1851 went in and fought that, and they won. And there is very likely some restitution on the case. It was a federal court case out of the Southern District of Ohio by Judge Lott. That impacts everything in northern Ohio, which is basically, from my understanding, from Columbus south. But since Judge Lott is the presiding judge of that court, that should impact everywhere in the state of Ohio. So all these rental fee inspection type programs out there are in jeopardy right now, and that's in large part thanks to the efforts of OREIA partnering with 1851. And I can't congratulate those guys enough. That was a huge win for us. It basically boiled down to unwarranted searches. Imagine this. The judge said that tenants have every bit as much right to privacy on their property as we do. So, as far as the city official knocking on your door and saying, hey, we're here to see your property, our tenants have the same rights. So I applaud them for it. It's very trend setting, and there are some restitution components to that. So with that, OREIA we're officially partnering with 1851 Center for Constitutional Law. Maurice Thompson is their executive director and a fine attorney. A little aggressive, but a fine guy. Having him represent anything. But he only does those types of issues. And we're collecting some funds for them so he can hire another attorney to fight some of these more local issues that we've had. I mean, we've had them in Fairborn, we've had them in Dayton, we've had them in Hamilton, Middletown, and all over. And we're trying to collect some funds for him. If any of you would like, it is a tax donation, it's a tax deduction. If any of you folks would see fit to write a $5 check to 1851 Center for Constitutional Law, be happy to take those. Again, it is a tax deduction. The other part of that, my personal plea to you, help us. I tried to give you a little snippet of what our legislators are doing for us, on behalf of us, behalf of our industry. To do that, it takes money. If any of you are interested in our OREIA legislative activities that save you money, believe me, they save you money in aggravation. I've got some clipboards up here. I'll try to take them at the back of the room so at your break you can sign those if you're interested in more information. And if you could write a check to OREIA PAC of any amount, if it's $5, $10, $15, you can shell out a $100 bill. I mean, he's digging his pocket already. Bless his heart. Thank you. We'd love to have your support. Yes, sir.
That's not one quick. Are you aware? Heard this from a fairly credible source. Yellow Springs is changing some of their community laws for rentals and attaching the electric bills to the homeowner instead of to the tenant. Have you heard that?
Nope. I have not. That is, sir, that is one of the hot button issues that I can do that without guaranteeing a very keen interest in that. And that's why we're trying to hire a dedicated attorney for OREIA to fight these issues throughout the state. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.